Ochart here. Thank you for tuning in. You know, it doesn't matter how much you paid for that filter. If you don't set it up right, it's going to be a waste of money. So let's talk about the 10 most common mistakes that I see in the setting up of filters, whether those filters are hang-on back, canisters, or any kind for that matter. Let's get right into it. So number one, we have media placement. This is how you position your media inside of your filter. For example, your sponges need to go from coarse to medium to fine. Why is that? Well, if you put your fine sponge first, it's just going to get clogged up, and your coarse sponge isn't going to do any work at all. So you let your coarse sponge catch the big particles, your medium sponge the medium particles, and then your fine sponge does the fine cleaning of the water. That would be one example. Next, number two is the placement of your biomedia. Your biomedia needs to have well oxygenated clean water running over it. Otherwise, you buy this media with all this wonderful capacity and these deep pockets that could be populated by beneficial bacteria, and because you don't have sponges filtering the water before it hits your biomedia, your media becomes immediately clogged up. So number two is the placement of your biomedia. Do not have it be the first thing the water hits, or you'll have wasted biomedia. Number three, know your flow. By that, what I mean is know the direction, and this is particularly true, of course, with canisters, with hang-on back filters and sumps and sponge filters. That's pretty obvious. But in a canister, sometimes people don't realize which way the water is flowing in the canister, and so they can't really position their media correctly, and in some cases, they have the water hitting the biomedia first, clogging up the biomedia, or they have the water hitting a fine sponge, which just simply clogs up, and instead of hitting that coarse sponge first. So number three, know your flow. Number four is going to seem a little silly, but you know, we all sort of think plug and play. And the truth is, you really need to crack open those directions, read your canister or your hang-on back or whatever the case may be. Read the directions first, get on YouTube and see what some people have done in the setting up of that particular unit. You're bound to find some videos on YouTube that'll give you some tips. And know before you go. Don't set it up incorrectly. Don't end up setting it up so it works totally inefficiently for several months and then discover that you've been using it wrong. Don't set it up in a way so that it ends up rattling and you end up throwing it out because you didn't really seat the baskets correctly so they were positioned correctly, and you end up thinking you have a rattling filter and you end up throwing it out and bad-mouthing the filter. So read the instructions and go on YouTube, get some advice, go on to some Facebook groups, get some tips on how to set it up. All right? Number five is too much. And I'm not going to get into the argument of can you filter too much? Can you have too much filtration? Look, you're going to have the amount of biological bacteria you're going to have, whether it's spread out over 20 canisters and 20 hang-on backs and a sump, or one filter and a bunch of substrate. You're going to have the amount of bacteria you're going to have. However, what I mean by too much is putting a filter that is too strong on a smaller tank. For example, using an FX6 on let's say, a 40-gallon. The output of that FX6 is going to push around those fish so much, they're going to be miserable. And that's what I mean by too much. Next, too little. Okay, you can also get the other side of the coin. You have a 120-gallon aquarium and you have one small hang-on back filter. You're going to have dead spots in that aquarium. You're going to have places where water doesn't circulate, unless perhaps if you're running some power heads or something. And you're going to have not enough filtration. So too much is probably just as bad as not enough, and you end up with a tank that never quite has that nice, crisp, pristine look that we all like to see. Number 7, cleaning your filter media in tap water. This is a great way to kill off your beneficial bacteria. Certainly in some cases you might have some sponges that you don't care about. You're counting on other things to house your beneficial bacteria. That's a call you have to make. But cleaning everything in that filter with tap water, which inevitably contains chlorine, chloramine, things of this nature, is going to kill off your beneficial bacteria and could potentially start your tank cycling again, creating an ammonia spike and a fish die-off. Number 8, cleaning your filters and doing a large water change and vacuuming at the same time. This very often can end up disrupting and killing off too much beneficial bacteria, and then your beneficial bacteria needs to catch up. While it's catching up, your tank will experience a spike in ammonia, and that ammonia will cause stress. You'll see the fish laboring. You might see some pink around the gills. You'll see the fish looking stressed, and in worst case scenario, dying off on you. Number 9, failing to remove charcoal, Purigen, ChemiPure, or any of those types of filtration medium. Failing to remove those when you're treating your tank with medication. That type of filtration will absorb the meds. It'll do what it's supposed to do. It'll absorb the meds, and those meds will never be delivered to your fish, and so you'll get zero benefit from the treatment. And last, number 10 ties into number 9. After treating with meds, forgetting to put charcoal into your filtration to absorb the residual meds that might remain after you've completed your treatment. You should throw some fresh charcoal in there. Usually just buy it loose, or you can buy it prepackaged. I like buying something like a matrix charcoal and a high absorbing charcoal, and put it in that filter and run it for a few weeks and then throw it out. That way it'll absorb any residual, any leftover medications that are in the tank and help clean them out. And then you just toss the whole thing away. And there's your bonus tip as well. Never leave charcoal in your filters for longer than a few months. Toss that stuff. So that's my take on filter setup. What are your thoughts? Do you have some that you want to add to the list? Any mistakes you've made in the setup of a filter? I'd like to hear about them below. In that Convo Gang, we all learn from each other, right? So post your comments below. Be sure to rate and share and all that good stuff. And I thank you for tuning in.